Before I begin, I'll be blunt. I know this story doesn't paint me in a flattering light. I fully understand that what I did was wrong. I'm not trying to justify my actions. No malice, no sick fantasies. But looking back, I can't ignore the undeniable truth. What I did was creepy. It was invasive. It crossed lines that shouldn't have been crossed. Does that mean I deserve what's coming for me? I don't think so. But then again, I can't shake the feeling that I've been marked, that I've been sentenced to pay with my life. Unlike those on death row, I don't have the luxury of knowing the exact date of my punishment. I don't know when my time will come, but I can feel it. It's there. That sense of dread, knowing at my insides. It's not just fear, it's something worse. It's a sickening, nauseating sensation that tightens around my chest and drags my heart into my stomach every time I glance at my bedroom window. Even when the curtains are drawn and the lock is latched, I know I'm going to die. Soon, I could try to fight it. I could go to the authorities, warn someone, maybe even check myself into a hospital or a jail. But I won't. I never have been good at taking action. I'm a spectator, not a participant. I've always been more comfortable observing from the shadows. My therapist called it crippling agoraphobia, but it's more than that. It started as a mild discomfort in crowds, but after the accident that took my mother's life and left me physically broken, it grew. It festered. Now, I can't stand the thought of being near people being seen. The mere idea of someone's gaze on me, judging me, fills me with paralyzing panic. So I stay inside. I don't leave my apartment unless it's absolutely necessary. Maybe 3 times a month, I venture out in the dead of night to avoid the world and its eyes. I go to CVS, pick up what I need, and rush back to my hole, my sanctuary. It's been 2 years since I've spoken to anyone who wasn't delivering food or collecting rent. Even then, I avoid eye contact. I don't want to see their pity, their judgment. I don't want them to look at me, see what I've become. But deep down, buried beneath layers of self-loathing and fear, I'm still human. I still crave connection, even if it's just a whisper of it. At first, I tried to fill the void with podcasts, TV shows, anonymous chat rooms, even a sleazy email service. But none of it worked. It wasn't enough. It never would be. I felt empty, hollow. And then, one night, I found it. A way to watch, a way to see without being seen. A method to tap into unsecured webcams, to peer into the lives of strangers without them knowing. It wasn't an accident. I searched for it. I knew exactly what I was doing. I knew how sick it was, how wrong it was, but I was desperate. I was so far gone that I didn't care anymore. I wasn't suicidal, no. That would have been too active to final. But I was close. So close. I just wanted to disappear, to be nothing. And I thought, maybe this would fill the void. Maybe watching others live would make me feel alive again. But it didn't. It only made the emptiness worse. And now, as the days drag on and the dread gnaws at me, I can feel the consequences of my actions closing in. I can feel them coming for me. I was on the edge, just one step away from crawling into bed and never coming out. It was a dark, suffocating time in my life, and this webcam trick was my desperate attempt to trick my disease, to trick the gnawing emptiness inside me. It was an illusion of socialization, a fragile thread of connection that I clung to like a lifeline. I was finally participating again, engaging with other humans. Even if they didn't know I existed, I knew how I looked, the greasy, antisocial computer hacker archetype, but the truth is, I wasn't even particularly good with computers. That's what made the ease of it all so unsettling. Accessing these webcams was disturbingly simple. Most of the feeds were from public CCTV cameras, aimed at street corners or parking lots. They were dull, lifeless. But even those, I found myself drawn to, watching for the strange, fleeting moments of life that passed through their lens. Then there were the personal webcams, laptops, Desktops where the real intrigue lay. I wormed my way into quite a few of those, too. I saw bedrooms, dorms, kitchens, living rooms. I watched people, their lives unfolding in real time, and sometimes, the rooms were empty. I'd bookmark the interesting ones, return later, waiting for the humans to show up, and they did. I probably watched upwards of 100 different people, keeping a rotating cast of favorites. An elderly man with 3 pet birds, who spent his days writing in a leather-bound notebook and feeding his birds sunflower seeds. A small Japanese woman, bent in impossible yoga poses, her body a study in grace. A university student, alternating between studying complex architecture and smoking weed with a constantly rotating parade of boyfriends. And yes, I'll admit it, I watched people have sex. I know that's wrong, but I need to say it wasn't out of some sick desire. My libido had long since gone dormant, like an ancient volcano that hadn't erupted in centuries, but I watched. And I watched a lot of other things to people eating, endlessly eating. Cereal. So much cereal. I was shocked by how universally loved it was. And there was reading, aimless web surfing, talking, exercising, cleaning, sleeping. Mostly sleeping, there was something oddly comforting about it. The steady rhythm of strangers drifting off into oblivion. It didn't erase my loneliness, but it dulled the pain, made it bearable. But then, one night, late even for me, I stumbled across something that changed everything. By then, I was nearly nocturnal, and I was sifting through my list of bookmarked webcams, looking for something to keep me company while I tried to sleep. Most of my usual favorites were unavailable. One had her laptop turned off, another had moved out, and the rest were either obstructed or completely empty. So I dove deeper into the raw feeds, clicking through endless parking lots and computer labs, until I found it. Her ... a girl, maybe in her mid-20s, sitting on her bed. But it wasn't just the sight of her that caught my attention, it was the way she was sitting, her arms wrapped around herself in a protective, almost desperate way. The hunch of her shoulders, the way she kept glancing out the window, as though she were watching for something, or someone. There was something unsettling about her, something wrong. I wasn't particularly perceptive, but even I could see it. She was terrified. Her room was dimly lit, but there was enough light to see her nervous movements flickering lava lamp, fairy lights casting soft shadows on the walls. The kind of light that should have felt cozy, but instead, it only deepened the sense of dread in the air. I didn't know why, but I couldn't look away. Something about her felt like a warning, a red flag waving in the dark. I watched her for hours, unable to tear myself away, even as the dread in my chest grew heavier. And then, just as I thought I'd seen enough, she moved, darting to the window, her gaze frantically searching the street below. I could make out most of the room, though it was tidy. It was the kind of tidy that felt almost suffocating. Neatly arranged stacks of books, baskets of laundry, all perfectly in place, but crowded. The camera's fidelity was high, meaning this computer wasn't old. Between that and the elegant upholstery she was kneeling on, I got the sense that this woman was successful, or at least, she gave off that impression. But then, there she was, huddled by the window, her gaze darting nervously, checking the outside world. Her actions were odd, unsettling. What was she looking at? Why did she seem so frantic? She kept stealing quick glances out the window, ducking back behind her wall, before repeating the cycle. She did this for what felt like an eternity, half an hour, maybe more, before finally crawling back into bed, clutching the covers tightly, her eyes clenched shut. I kept watching, drawn in. Something about her tense stillness, her palpable anxiety, stirred something in me. My pulse quickened, I began to sweat, an inexplicable tension building in my chest. I switched over to a light-hearted sitcom on another monitor, trying to distract myself, but my eyes kept drifting back to her. Every few minutes, I checked, my obsession growing. Then, around dawn, it happened. She jolted awake, her head whipping around to face the window, I couldn't hear anything, of course, only the visuals from the webcam, but I could see her frozen, straining, as though she were trying to hear something that wasn't there. Whatever had disturbed her, whatever had woken her, it seemed to be happening again. She scrambled out of bed, eyes locked on the window, her movements sharp and frantic. She fumbled for something on her bedside table, grabbed it and axe. My stomach churned as I watched her, unsure of what was unfolding. She brought it up to her face, as though preparing for something someone, and then backed out of the webcam's view. I watched the feed for hours after that, past daybreak, until I could barely keep my eyes open anymore. She never returned to the frame. The blinds never moved. I went to bed, utterly bemused by what I'd witnessed. I barely slept, plagued by nightmares I couldn't remember when I woke up. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, something was coming. For nearly a week, I kept checking her webcam, hoping to catch some glimpse of what had terrified her so much. Most nights, I found her sleeping, or watching TV, her life seemingly mundane. But then, one night, I tuned in to find her room shrouded in an unnatural darkness. She had never slept in complete darkness before. The fairy lights were off. The only source of light was the dim glow of the lava lamp, casting faint orange shadows across the room. And then I saw it, the window. It was open. This was the first time I had ever seen it that way, and something about it felt wrong. It wasn't just the fact that it was open, it was the emptiness outside it. The darkness seemed to stretch on, unnervingly vast. I couldn't look away. My gut twisted with a creeping, gnawing anxiety. I squinted at the screen, straining to make sense of the darkness. And then, I saw it, a glint. It was quick, barely noticeable, but it was there, something just outside the window. I couldn't make it out, but I knew it was something. I couldn't let it go. I took screenshots, adjusted the contrast, played with the saturation, trying to pull out more details. Every few minutes, I checked the webcam again, as though I was trying to catch something I couldn't yet see. Most of the screenshots were nothing, just shadows and pixels. But in one, when I cranked up the brightness, I saw them. The small white dots, barely visible, floating in the center of the window. They were so faint, so small, that I almost dismissed them as nothing. Video artifacts, insects, a trick of the light. But I couldn't stop thinking about them. They haunted me. I kept staring at them, unable to shake the feeling that they were something more, something watching me. That night, I dreamed of the eyes, those two faint white dots in the window, and the shadows that seemed to stretch forever. When I checked the webcam the next evening, the room was even darker than before. The lava lamp, that comforting orange glow, had been turned off. The room was swallowed in darkness, but through the blackness, I could just make out the faint outline of the window. The blinds were gone, not just open, not just ajar, they were completely missing, leaving the window exposed to the night. My heart skipped. The window was open, the lip of the bottom pane pulled up to its highest point, leaving the room vulnerable, exposed. There was no screen, no barrier, nothing. I could barely make out anything else. The moonlight was too weak, the camera too grainy. I couldn't even tell if the woman was there. She could have been anywhere. She could have been gone. A cold dread gripped me. I tried to push it away, but it was relentless. I couldn't stop staring at the empty space, the yawning window. There was no reason to feel this way, no logical reason. People opened windows all the time. But something in me, something primal, screamed that I shouldn't be looking at this, that I should turn away. I pulled myself out of the surveillance program and leaned back in my chair, a sense of panic rising in my chest. I couldn't explain it. I had no concrete reason to be afraid. But I knew I knew something was wrong. When I checked back in later, the sun had risen. The window was still open, the blinds still missing. The room, as usual, was filled with shelves of books, a few scattered belongings, but the bed was a mess. The blankets were piled in the middle of the mattress in a shapeless lump, and the throw pillows, usually neat and arranged, were scattered in disarray. I couldn't see the person in the bed. The comforter was too bulky, the shape too ambiguous. But there was a brownish stain on one of the pillows, something that looked disturbingly like a smear of blood. It hadn't been there before. I felt my stomach twist. My mouth went dry. The lump in the bed hadn't moved. It had been there for nearly 24 hours, unmoving. I should have called the police. I should have done something. But I didn't. I couldn't. I didn't know where she lived. I didn't know anything about her, other than the fact that her IP address probably put her in the same time zone as me. What if they traced it back to me? What if they found out what I was doing? What if I got caught? No, I couldn't. I was too scared to face the consequences, too terrified of interacting with anyone. So, I kept watching. That night, around 2 a.m., I tuned in again. The room was still dark, but I could feel my pulse quicken as I stared at the screen. The moon was full, casting a silvery glow through the window. The room was lit more brightly than before, the familiar features of the room standing out in stark relief. But the bed was different. That was the first thing I noticed. Something had changed. Something was wrong. The lump beneath the covers was still there, but now something rested on top of it, an egg-shaped blotch, like a dark shadow of bruised grape. It shifted, almost imperceptibly at first, rocking back and forth with a jerky, unnatural motion. A sickening realization gnawed at me. It wasn't the woman. It couldn't have been. The way it moved was wrong. The thing atop the bed was writhing, shuddering, almost violently. It jerked back and forth with manic speed, each movement more unsettling than the last. Then, there was a sudden release, a grotesque relief of tension. The shape lurched, a limb-like protrusion emerging from the mass, pulling something toward it. The object was torn away, shredded from the bed, and the limb drew it back to the center of the writhing form. That's when I saw them again, those twin white dots. They were so small at first, barely noticeable, set deep within the shape. The moment my eyes locked onto them, the figure froze. A wave of dread flooded me. The dots slowly rose, as if they were aware, fixed directly on the webcam. The shape extended another limb, pulling and tearing at the sheets, uncovering whatever it had been hiding. The dots never left the camera's gaze, locking onto me with a chilling precision. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I turned off the monitor, my hands shaking uncontrollably, and then I unplugged my PC, desperate to sever the connection. I bit back the urge to vomit, forcing myself to breathe evenly, to calm my racing heart, but the terror gnawed at me. I knew I should call the authorities, but the idea of involving anyone, of facing them, was unbearable. What if they traced this back to me? What if they found out what I had been watching? I could take a fine. I could take prison time, if they kept me isolated. But what if this thing was bigger than anything I could handle? There was something primal in my fear, a deep-rooted terror, like prey sensing a predator lurking nearby. And yet, I made the mistake. I couldn't help myself. I turned my computer back on. I opened the surveillance program once more, drawn to the woman's feed. I needed to know ... The sun had risen. The room looked almost peaceful in the daylight, but then, I saw it. The woman's head. It was perched on the windowsill, haphazardly slumped, staring outward. Her face was frozen in a slack, unblinking grimace, but her throat was nothing but a mangled mess, torn open like raw meat. The head hadn't been severed. It had been ripped from her body, violently, like some sickening trophy. The head was turned, eyes fixed toward the webcam, staring straight into my eyes. The message was unmistakable. I see you. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. I was paralyzed by my own fear, my own inability to do anything but watch, and I waited. I kept watching, knowing full well that I should have called someone, that I should have done anything else ... But I didn't. I'm still here, still watching. The terror is creeping closer. It's almost here. I can hear it now, just outside my window. Waiting. It's waiting for me to open it, but I won't. I can't. I can't run. I can't hide dot dot. So, I'm going to watch. I'm going to wait dot dot. And when it comes, I won't be able to stop it.